Wash your hands.
Let's do this. Let's go. Greetings, Nick with Sweetwater here, and today I'm at the Speedway in Plymouth, Indiana, and I bumped into this fine gentleman here, this Northern Ireland gent, the one, the only Vivian Campbell, who's here with Last in Line. So I want to ask you a few questions about Last in Line, but first of all, if you don't own this, the third Last in Line album, Jericho, right this wrong right now, pause this damn video, go buy it. And buy it, don't stream it, buy the damn thing.
Yeah.
Now, I first saw this man in '83 when you played Download with, Donington as it was known then.
Yeah, Castle Donington.
I'd heard the album, but I didn't know what you looked like. I didn't know where you were from because there was no internet, none of this nonsense, no Googles. All I can tell you is this, my friend, I watched you play and then went home and woodshedded for a week because you tore it up, my friend, you tore it up. And here you are, goodness knows what, 40 odd years later.
Yeah, and I still can't play it right. So I went home and woodshedded for 40 odd years. I'm still working on it.
But it's working better than my woodshedding. So tell us a little bit about Last in Line, because I know you joined Thin Lizzy, which is one of your favorite bands, in 2011. I heard a rumor that playing with them lit a fire with you to get aggressive again, because you've been in Def Leppard for quite a while.
Yeah, well, I've been in Leppard for 31 years, and we took a year off, 2011 into 2012,
right?
And I always get itchy fingers when we take that amount of time off. So as it happened, Scott Gorham was getting a version of Thin Lizzy back together with Brian Downey, the original drummer, and Darren Wharton, the keyboard player. And so Scott, first of all, he called Joe Elliott and said, "Joe, I hear you're not touring, can I borrow Viv?" And Joe said, "Absolutely, yeah." So it's kind of like you had to ask permission. And then Scott called me, and I was just like, "Hey, yeah." I mean, it was Lizzy were such an important band to me.
Me too, I gotta say.
You know, when I was 16, 17, whatever. I mean, when I was really focusing on my craft and really trying to find my way as a guitar player, and you know, Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham, the two original guitar players,
Live and Dangerous.
Yeah, I knew every lick of Live and Dangerous, and it's a funny story about that. So we got into the rehearsal room and Don't Believe a Word, which is a Brian Robertson guitar solo, 100%. And I started playing the solo when we were rehearsing, and Scott was, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, you know, I'm playing Brian's parts, and you play your parts because you're Scott Gorham." And he says, "I played that solo." I went, No, you didn't. sorry, Mr. Gorham. Sorry, no, you didn't. Well, he says, "Well, I play the second half of it." I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'm not going to argue with it." So we traded off.
Gotcha.
But I don't know. So I guess things change over the course of time.
Right.
You know, but I was back to being 17 and, you know, Live and Dangerous. But anyway, so I went out. I actually spent more money on equipment for that tour than they paid me. I swear to God, I wanted like a more authentic sound. I bought a Mojave Scorpion amp.
Oh, good.
I had one built for me, a little 50-watt little screamer.
Yeah, that's a luggage.
And I got one of those Echoplex.
That famous one. Yeah.
So it was fantastic. I had a great time. I used to make them play the rocker. They never wanted to play the rocker as an encore because they're like, "No, let's just go to bed." And I just start playing it. And then they're like, "Oh, God, we got to do it," because he started it. So
that was one of the first songs I learned, the rocker.
Yeah. And well, like Eric Bell. I mean,
what a guitar player.
Yeah, man. I know.
Great in the jar.
And then, of course, through Lizzy, it was Gary Moore. And Gary Moore was like my ultimate guitar hero. So it was such an honor for me to play those songs on stage with those guys. You know, and it was really just a short span of time. It was only three and a half, 4 months or so.
Right. So Gary Moore, a huge influence, obviously.
Yeah.
What was it that made you gravitate towards his style of playing?
The intensity. Yeah. It's like he just was all in. He was committed to playing. Like, you know, there's a certain thing about playing, you know, like I'm a very, very physical player because of my influences. You know, I started Rory Gallagher was my first album, first concert. Also my second concert, also my third and my fourth and my fifth, because nobody else came to Belfast in the 70s. So used to see Rory at the Ulster Hall every Christmas. He'd do a series of shows. But Rory was a very physical player. He was a blues player. You know, he bent the strings, heavy strings too. You know, pinch harmonics, so a very heavy approach with the right hand, palm muting. And then, when I discovered Gary Moore's playing, it was that times 10 or times 100,
Hyperdrive,
whatever.
yeah.
Just really, really, really physical, intense vibrato, heavy palm muting. I mean, it's, when I went to LA the first time when I was making the Holy Diver album with Ronnie and the guys, there's so many great guitar players, and we were just talking before we went on air here about some great guitar players in LA who was just like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. How do you play like that? And the way they play like that is because they barely touch the strings.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And I just couldn't do it. So I spent several years, my first years in LA, being intensely frustrated, trying to reverse my style. Because I wanted to play like those guys. I wanted to play like Paul Gilbert, but I couldn't because I'm too
heavy-handed.
Heavy-handed or ham-fisted, depends how charitable you might be feeling.
I would say you're heavy-handed because you're very articulate. Like a lot of your stuff's very percussively rhythmic.
It is percussive and rhythmic, yes. I'm glad you picked up on that because
That's the Gary Mooreism. Well.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about the open string thing in solos, and that's part of it. It is both rhythmic and percussive. When you introduce elements like that into the structure of a guitar solo, it takes it away from just being a bunch of linear notes,
right?
Which is good. I mean, you need the notes in the solo, and you want the flash parts, but you want it to be a little bit different, and you want that, or at least I want that kind of punch to it, that comes when you do things like that.
But talking of soloing, because you're very, your solos are hummable. I was interviewing Lita earlier. We were talking about hummable solos, like the influences, like Gary Moore again, like Parisian Walkways, for example, that kind of thing, or Brian May, and she went, and you started sound checking, she went, and that guy on the stage over there also does it. Do you compose your solos, or do you improvise then learn it?
I've learned the hard way to compose them.
Right.
The problem was the very first solo I did for Dio was Rainbow in the Dark.
Right.
And it was the first take.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So we
I quit.
We'd finished tracking, and I don't know what night of the week it was, but Ronnie said to me, tomorrow evening we're going to start the solos. What do you want to start with? And I just went, well, no, Rainbow in the Dark. He said, okay. So all day I went into the studio and I was just playing an A, just mindlessly riffing. Any lick I had in A, I was playing it over and over and over again because the song's in the key of A. And so that night we got the guitar sound, and then I was like, okay, let's go, let's try one. And I played that solo, and we finished it, and Ronnie went, wow. He said, that was great. Do you want to try another? And I'm thinking, oh, what was wrong with that one? And then I start freaking out. And so then I started thinking, okay, I started there, so I can't do that. So I got this mental block because I'm thinking, well, I can't play, what I just played. What am I going to do? So I did something, and and Ronnie went, oh, okay, let's keep the first one. Let's move on. But that sort of set the tone for me. I'm thinking, as long as I'm warmed up and in the zone, I just wing it, just when the red light goes on, I'm going to play, we're going to get something. And unfortunately, from that moment on, it was downhill. Like every one of them got, so the lightning did not strike twice on that.
Right.
And then by the second album, by Last in Line, I realized that I needed to structure, but I sort of left it like my homework when I was at school. I was last minute Larry, so I'd get a guitar sound and then I'd have Angelo, our engineer, set up a track for me. And this is 2-inch recording,
right?
The Ampex machine. And I'd say to Ronnie and Angelo, why don't you guys go have a coffee, get a drink, play pinball or something? I just want to try a little something here. And then I'd play through, and if I got part of something that I thought was good, I'd get Angelo back in and he'd set me up on the next track, and I'd do like 3 or 4 tracks.
Right.
And then Ronnie and Angelo would come in and they just like, make a little comp.
Gotcha.
So some of the solos came out that way. The smart thing would have been to just sit down with a cassette tape back in the day, and showing my age here, and to just actually work something out. But I was still, I guess, in denial about that. And it's only in recent years now where I actually absolutely sit down, listen to the track, listen to it over and over, and try and imagine in my mind where the guitar solo is going to go, and then try and figure it out.
So the Holy Diver solo, was that ad-libbed or a
Holy Diver solo, I think, was a comp. I would guess.
It sounds, it's very, it's one of those classic solos.
Well, I did remember Ronnie asking me if I meant to end on that last note. Whatever it is. I don't know what's the relation to it. It's not a minor third. It's a note, a tone below the next. I don't know anything about music. I'm sorry, but I know what the note was. And Ronnie said to me, "Did you mean to end on that? Just checking." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, that's really cool." So we're just going to keep that. But he wanted to make sure it wasn't a mistake, you know.
Gotcha.
I think it was a comp. I don't think it was a start to finish, you know. But it wasn't structured. It certainly wasn't something I sat down and thought, I'm going to work out these parts. But listening to it now and playing it now with these guys, yeah, it has a lot of structure. Luck of the Irish, or else it was a really good comp, or a little of both. Probably both.
Now, one of the things I love about Last in Line is the fact that all the albums sound like you guys pretty much record live. How true is that? Is that just my imagination?
No, 100%. We record the tracks live.
Oh, really?
The interplay between guitar, bass, and drums, we have to be able to see the whites of each other's eyes, and we get as close as possible in the room, not in separate rooms on headphones. We're in a room together. You'll notice that no matter where we play, no matter how big the stage is, in fact, going back to Donington, we played at what is now called Download in 2019. We opened the main stage. It was the year that Def Leppard closed. So I did double duty. I opened it and I closed it. So no matter how big a stage we're on, we set up like in close proximity. Vinny wants my 412 cab right next to his right shoulder as close as possible. So that's something that we just do. We're looking for that dynamic. And when we play live, there's a lot of that push and pull too. We don't, in the studio, we don't cut to a track.
I was going to ask you if you, so there's no click track, nothing.
We never cut to a click, but Vinny's timing in the studio is so good that we can actually lift for multiple takes if need be. We've done that on a couple of different little sections where we wanted to edit something after the fact. So we do that, and then we just take our stuff home, basically, you know, because everyone's got home recording. So Andy goes home and does his vocals. I do my guitar solos at home. For the last record for Jericho, and that actually worked out to be pretty good. I don't like home engineering, home recording, because I'm not a tech guy. I can barely operate an iPhone, and seriously, and so, but once I get it to go, some smart guy has to show me, you do this, you do that, you do that, and then in a Pavlovian manner, I can actually write it down so I don't forget, and then come in the next day and do it. And it was a bit more comforting to do it that way because I had time to structure again, getting back to that rather than just, you know, a wing and a prayer.
And one last quick question. When it comes to writing with Last in Line, because, you know, you called this your side project, one of the best side projects of all time, in my opinion. How do you guys write?
We throw the wall, literally. I mean,
and there you go, kids.
We just go in and play. See, the thing is, it's different from writing with Def Leppard. In Def Leppard, we're trying to target right in Def Leppard. We conceptualize an album before we even start it. Usually, you know, we think about, well, what kind of an album should we be making? And we're always trying to reinvent the wheel in Def Leppard. We're trying to make everything the absolute best it can be. And we have, you know, the time and the resources to do that. In Last in Line, we have no money. I mean, we have no budget. You know, it's a cheese sandwich budget, and so it's guerrilla recording. It's basically, well, guys, you know, we've got till midnight to write and record 4 songs. So it's like, okay, who's got a riff? And that's how it starts. I mean, we never come in with a whole song. Phil will have a riff, or I'll have a riff, or even Andy will suggest something musical first, or Vinny will just start on a groove, and we'll go, oh, that's sexy. We can play to that, and we just start goofing around it. And we latch on to something, and then we're, okay, well, what does that sound like? Is that a verse, or is it a chorus? Is it a bridge, a middle eight? And it's useful to have Andy in the room with us at this point, because he can say, I hear that as being verse or chorus, and then we can structure it accordingly. Usually we have an idea of what the song is before we record it, but not always the case. Sometimes we go into the studio and cut the actual backing track without knowing at all what the melody is going to be or what these parts are, and then we give it to Andy. He puts it in Pro Tools and slices and dices and comes back with a whole different arrangement based on that. But
it's still a live. It's a live performance that's been.
It's a live backing track. Yeah.
Wow.
It does. Just one thing about Andy Freeman. It does amaze me that he can put a melody over some of it. we give him, you know,
Right.
'cause
He
some
does
of it
it
is
great.
just like, I'm thinking, how the hell is anyone going to sing over this? But he does manage
great. That's
to
great.
figure it out, you know.
So it's guerrilla recording.
It totally is guerrilla recording. It's always been that way, you know. It'd be wonderful if, you know, back in the old days, you had a big recording budget. You could go to some manor somewhere
Right.
and spend a month, you know, just hanging out and having fun with your friends and writing and recording. But that doesn't happen anymore, you know. So
Well, Vivian, I know you've got a meet and greet. Thank you for
I
taking
do.
the time. And
I have
thanks
to
for,
meet and greet.
once again, folks, Jericho. And then get the first two, because they're really, really good.
They're not bad.
They're,
Last time I
if that's not bad,
Yeah.
make your target be not bad, kids. See you.